Hey, deserving listeners, it's time for me to react to your comments from my videos from last week. Let's get to it. Actually, these first comments are from my last comment video, so I am now commenting on your comments on my comment videos about your comments about my videos. Claire says, LOL. So I asked people what nicknames they had for their animals. Claire says, LOL, I have a cat called Moomin, who my daughters call Boy Boy, and who I tend to call Fatteus Boom Boom. Fatteus Boom Boom. Chance says, we have an animal named Ava, which has turned into Ava Babes, Babes, Dumbbell, Big Baby, The Goyle, Sweet Angel Food Cake, Small Beast, and Turkey Girl. Bitter Flower says, my cat's name is Tara. She's also Baby Girl, the Tara Baby, Pretty Goyle, there's that word again, Goyle, Pretty Kitty, and Little Shit. Well, that escalated quickly. Joe says, my sister is named Emily. So not my animal, but my sister is named Emily. From this, I got Lem, and then Lemon Wedge, and then Women Ledge, and then Ledge, and then Sledgehammer, and also sometimes Lulu and Lulu Bell, and M, and E-Dog, and many more. Lemon Wedge, that's a good one. Sean says, my cat's name is Lily, and she gets called Little Girl, Boo Boo, Kiddo, Chica, and Turd Butt. Lots of turd butt, turkey butt kind of names. Pablo says, we have a cat named Sam, which goes by Sammy, Baby, Babies, Demon Cat, Orange Demon, Fat Kitty, Big Boy, Old Man, My Son, My Little Son, and My Big Son. So both my little son and my big son. Keegan says, I used to have a fish named Sushi. Oh, that's dark, Keegan. Jaco Mako says, I call my one cat Dumpster Butt. So among my listeners to this podcast and or viewers to this channel, we have Dumpster Butt, Turd Butt, Turkey Butt, lots of butt names, and Fatteus Boom Boom. Fatteus Boom Boom. Oh, that's so good. Kalani and Asuelu videos. Adele says, I've been told in the past that my tears were manipulative and it traumatized me my whole life. So, there was crying in the episode. I've been told in the past that my tears were manipulative and it traumatized me my whole adult life. I would tend to hold my tears in, and it has been very damaging to me. I become completely disconnected from my emotions. I've been in therapy almost a year, and my wonderful therapist has me working on getting me back in touch with my emotions. P.S. Love your content and your merch, especially the t-shirts. Well, along those lines, Adele, we have this shirt that I just got in the mail with a new, the other one is yellow, which I like, but this is I feel like whoever makes this merch, they have some nice t-shirts and good colors. Kalani Asuelu videos. This is the time where Kalani was crying. Justine says, my parents are the cutest couple. So in this video, Kalani was talking to her sister about the fact that Kalani and Asuelu sleep in separate rooms. And the sister was like, there's something terribly wrong with that. And I was saying, there's nothing wrong with that. Now, there might be something terribly wrong with Kalani and Asuelu's relationship, but sleeping in different rooms is not a sign of that. I mean, it might be a symptom of their distance, but just because you sleep in separate rooms doesn't mean anything. And Justine says, my parents are the cutest couple and live in different houses. They've been married for 27 years. Everybody is different. Absolutely, Justine. Sweet Girl says, sometimes sleeping in different rooms is not so bad. Dealing with lack of sleep is really difficult on the body and the mind. Yes, absolutely. It's one of the biggest reasons why people would sleep in separate rooms is because of sleep issues. And if you've ever had sleep problems or you sleep lightly, it can ruin your life in a variety of ways. I mean, literally, depression and suicide can increase with lack of sleep. Rainey says, when Dr. Honda destigmatizes something that I do, it lifts a weight off my chest. It also helps me to not judge others so harshly as well. He creates ripple effects of empathy. Ah, Rainey, that is my mission in life. So you saying that made my whole life. Zulala says, I used to have a completely separate room from my husband. He would wake up every time I rolled over. Plus, we had different sleeping schedules, so it was for the best that we had our own places to sleep. Patchouli Flower says, I've always had a separate room for my partner. It offers us both our unique space to have as we choose, and in return, we have a lot of appreciation towards inviting one another into our unique and special places. Plus, if we had a disagreement and we want some space, we can take it. Yeah, that's another reason why you might benefit from having two different places, is because if you need some time to cool down, you can go into your room. T says, me and my husband sleep in different rooms for the most part, and I'm an extremely light sleeper, but we still have a great marriage. Yeah, absolutely. Heliosphere says, I am so thankful to hear Dr. Honda say that it is okay to sleep in different rooms. My husband and I have been doing this for a long time, but a family therapist tried to tell us how it is wrong to sleep in different rooms because, according to her, the children would notice and get upset. The therapist had heard about our daughter's night terrors and tried to find a reason for that in our sleeping arrangements. Ugh. Later, I would learn that the night terrors are rooted in brain development and have nothing to do with sleeping arrangements. I never had the impression that our kids minded us sleeping in separate rooms. I think the therapist was grasping at straws because she had no real idea what to do about the night terrors. Yeah, Heliosphere. Ugh, I am so sorry this happened to you. On behalf of therapists, and particularly family therapists, I'm sorry that you went through that. Maybe it's an hypothesis you could throw out there, but you'd have to get very specific statements from the children that their emotions are heightened or become negativistic because of the parents sleeping in separate rooms, which is not an automatic. But it doesn't surprise me, honestly, that a therapist would be so myopic to just learn, okay, I have a kid with night terrors, and the therapist doesn't know what to do. And instead of saying, you know what, I don't know what to do, or you know what, that's not really my area, because it isn't really a therapist's area. Night terrors are, as you say, often related to development or sleep issues. There can be serotonin problems or digestion problems, or you can literally have sleep disorders that can happen that are biological in nature and not related to the family system. But sometimes it is related to, sleep problems can be related to the family system. But to just look at this one element of the family and say, oh, it's because you're sleeping in separate rooms, that's why your kid is having night terrors. What? And again, it doesn't surprise me. I'm sorry to say. I mean, therapists are people too. And what are you going to do? Keisha says, it's definitely a cultural difference that's causing a lot of problems in Kalani and Asuelu's relationships. I'm not even, so this was the video in which Kalani was trying to say, how do you show me you love me? And Asuelu says, well, I brought you pizza the other day. And Kalani says, my brother brings me food. And then they got into a fight about it. Keisha says, it's definitely a cultural difference that's causing a lot of problems between the two of them. I'm not even from another country, but in the South and among Black people, fixing your partner a plate is a big gesture. It's even more so when a man fixes a plate for a woman. My boyfriend made me a plate for me the other day at a party because I was busy doing something else. It was super sweet and romantic to me because it showed me he was thinking about me and wanted to make sure I was taken care of. Yes, absolutely. So my statement or conceptualization of what's happening between Kalani and Asuelu is that they're miscommunicating a lot, and they are easily triggered, and they misunderstand each other. And Asuelu has some issues, and Kalani has some issues, but I'd say Asuelu may have a little bit more issues that interfere with attachment and communication and self-awareness. But I think Kalani does too. But anyway, so in that moment, Kalani was like, essentially what she wanted to say, I think, was, I don't feel loved, and I'd like you to express more affection and care for me, like you actually like me or think about me and are interested in how I am doing. And said, how do you do that? And Asuelu, I think, honestly thought, well, how do I? And he said, well, I brought you food. And for him, for Asuelu, bringing her food was actually a gesture. Now, maybe it's not a huge gesture. Maybe it's not the gesture Kalani is looking for. But Asuelu was answering the question, and Kalani just slammed him for it. Just said, oh, that's ridiculous. My brother brings me food. Anything else? That kind of thing. And Asuelu, given his differentiation and maturity level, he couldn't handle that criticism. He put himself out there and was slapped back. He should have been able to say, well, honey, actually, when I said bringing you pizza, I know maybe you don't appreciate it as much as I hope you will, but that's actually a pretty big deal to me and my family. That's how we show each other we love each other. So when I gave you pizza the other day, I was actually trying to express my love to you. I'm hearing you didn't receive it because, it doesn't sound like it's a big deal to you, but that is how I try to express love to you. But Asuelu doesn't have that maturity or differentiation, and then he got hurt, and then he gets hostile, and then he says his things, and he stands over her and all that stuff. Anyway, Sasset says, so far, there are a lot of signs pointing to that Asuelu uses food as a love language. He totally lit up when he was in charge of meals. That's right, Sasset. I remember that. He said, the best of the best. And the whole, you're the pineapple of my life thing. Yeah, I think we're definitely seeing a theme with Asuelu and food, which, as a Japanese American, I can relate to. Maria says, when Asuelu said, I bring you food without asking, I totally got it. When your love language are acts of service, your partner doing something for you without you having to ask is like the pinnacle of romance. Maybe it's not that. Maybe it's not for Kalani, but I can see why Asuelu would consider it a romantic gesture. Yeah, love languages are a thing as well. Shauna says, crying is my default. So, we also were talking about crying. Crying is my default for any big feelings. It's how my body expresses itself. Sad, frustrated, overwhelmed, proud of my kids, in love with my husband, grateful for my life, cry, cry, cry. Sometimes for no reason, the tears just come. It was really nice to hear Kirk say, more people should be crying all the time, honestly. Yes, more people should be crying all the time. As I said in the video, I'm sure when we are happy or we think something's funny, we will smile or laugh. And that's okay. That's normal, right? That's a physical, almost involuntary physical reaction of expressing an emotion that signals to the other person how we're feeling. Well, crying is the same way. When you have a physiological reaction that wants to express itself, and there are billions or millions of people around the planet who are shamed so sufficiently as children about their crying that they can't express themselves. They can't, even if they tried. I mean, I went through that when I was young. I actually I felt the shame of crying. And I actually remember when I was in the 6th grade, whenever I felt like crying, I actually changed it into anger. I obviously wasn't a therapist when I was 10 years old, but I was so ashamed of being a boy and crying, like at recess or something, that I switched it to anger, and then I didn't really cry for many years after that. Even when I wanted to, there'd be times in my life where I thought I should be crying right now, and no tears would be coming because I had neurologically turned off that pathway. And with a lot of therapy and a lot of introspection, a lot of coaxing it, I now cry similar to you, Shauna. Sad, frustrated, overwhelmed, proud of my family members, in love with my wife, grateful for my life, cry, cry, cry. Sappy commercials, movies. I was just watching Jenny and Summit, actually. Those videos should come out soon. And when Jenny cries, I tend to cry because Jenny is a very sweet person, and I just feel so bad for her. Anyway, Mel says, I'm so glad I found your videos. Listening to you has taught me how to recognize my true feelings and how to share them with my husband. I can't believe how much easier it is to communicate when you can just say exactly what you're feeling and what you need from others. I can't thank you enough. Yes, warms the heart, Mel. Thank you so much. I'm so glad. Yes, recognize your true feelings. The primary feelings, usually hurt or fear, pain or anxiety, and if you express it from that place and say, okay, what you're doing right now is, actually, and actually you can do this for your spouses as well. This morning I was walking with my wife and the dogs, and we were talking about what were we talking about? Some sort of renovation on the house. And I wanted something and she wanted something else. So we were disagreeing about what we should do with the house. I can't remember what it was, and I stopped and I thought, well, and I asked her, is this a preference that you have or is this an anxiety thing? Because I wasn't sure, and it felt like it might be an anxiety thing for her. Because for me, if it's a preference thing, and we just have two different preferences, like, well, I want to paint the house blue and I want to paint the house brown, and it's just a preference thing, then we're on the same level. We each have as many percentage points in the executive subsystem. That's a weird way to put it. We both have equal votes, I suppose, on the outcome. But if it's an anxiety thing for her, then I don't want to cause her anxiety by imposing my preference on her. So I asked her, is this a fear thing or is this a preference thing? And she said, well, it's a little of both. So good on her to be able to recognize that. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, then you get what you want, because if it's an anxiety thing to you, then that overrides just my mild preference for what should happen here. And so you can do it both ways, and this is what I work with my couples on a lot. Is best case scenario, you're able to identify your primary emotions and communicate them well in a non-accusatory way. That's in a nutshell. If you can learn one thing from me about relationships, it's communicating about your hurt or your fear in a way to the other person that they can understand in a non-accusatory manner. Like, okay, what you did to me, it triggered me. It's not your fault, but I get triggered when this happens. Not your fault. I know you didn't mean to trigger me, but it triggers me, and I'm extremely hurt, and I'm very, very sad, and I'm very, very scared right now because of what you did. Not your fault. Always have to shower with the not your fault part, because if it comes across as accusatory, it hurts them, and then now they have to deal with the fact that they're being triggered, right? But the other side of it that I work with couples on is when you are triggered, it's hard to be differentiated, and so the other person can make up the difference by saying, are you triggered? Is there something going on? Are you hurt? I'm seeing anger, but are you hurt? Are you sad? Are you scared? Is that what is happening? Or just operate from that possibility. When 99% of the time, if not 100% of the time, when your spouse or your friends or your family members are being hostile and mean to you, it's because they are hurt or afraid. 99% of the time or 100% of the time. So anytime someone is coming at you with, they're being a jerk face to you, just think, okay, what happened that caused them to be afraid? And maybe it has nothing to do with you. Maybe they're just scared of something else that's going on in their life, and they're operating from that place of fear, and you just sort of stepped on a landmine. So thank you for that, Mel. Kalani and Asuelu car crash video. That's when Asuelu got in the car crash, and Kalani suddenly says, oh, I want to be married to him now. Just before that, for months, she's like, I want a divorce. This is it. Asuelu gets in a car crash, and suddenly she's like, oh, I suddenly realized that I don't want to leave him. And I was wondering, is that really how you want to operate? Because just because he got in a car crash, I mean, I get that you care about him. That's totally fine. But that doesn't take away your relationship problems and all the complaints that you've been having. For the record, I believe the two of them, if they continued to go to that one therapist, could have solved a lot of their problems. But from the sound of it, they only went to one session or just a couple. And then I think the pandemic also affected. But anyway, Sid says, my ex was in a life-threatening accident, and then I thought I wanted to date him again. I even visited him in the hospital multiple times, but after I started talking to him again, I remembered that I couldn't stand him. Right. Wow. And that's one of the best ways to dispel your longing for a fantasy about an ex. And this is something that a lot of people, and let me know in the comments if you've gone through this, that you will, your ex from 5 years ago, you'll romanticize and idealize them. And then it'll build up over time. And if you're not in a situation where you can actually talk to them, the fantasy will just get bigger and bigger. And then if you ever have a chance, you actually meet up with them for coffee or something to talk, and you realize, oh yeah, that's right, I hate this person. That's why. This is why we broke up in the first place. Why did I idealize that? Usually there's a ego need, there's a defense mechanism. And by the way, I'm working on a deep dive on all the defense mechanisms, and there are many, and really trying to go deep halfway just for myself, because I want to learn about all the defense mechanisms and have them quick on my mind so that I can recall them as I talk on these episodes. But I'm going to it's going to be a full deep dive for patrons only. Anyway. Bao says, pure speculation. I remember when I was studying psychology, one study was described. It was a first date scenario with their participants. I forget what the control parameters were, but the other people met and had a walk across a long rope bridge over a deep canyon. Those in the latter group were more likely to say they were interested in the other person. The idea was that scary situations can heighten feelings, even feelings of love and attraction. Right. So this is a known phenomenon. It's not a strong signal, but it's there enough in the data to suggest that for us humans, when we go through intense emotional experiences, it tends to bond us with whoever we just happen to be with. And it kind of makes some sense when you're in a tribe on the African savannah 200,000 years ago, and you go through something very scary, like a tiger tries to kill you and your friends, and you get away. It kind of makes sense that after the scary event, whoever you're with, you would feel like, oh, we really got through that together, because you could and say, hey, we need to make sure we band together so we can avoid that thing in the past. But also, we have to help each other recover emotionally from that experience. And so it would make sense that we evolved that mechanism. I don't think it's a super strong mechanism, but it's there. And this individual Bao on YouTube is saying that there's this study that they remember from psychology in which people would go on a first date, and they would put people in two different groups. One group would just have a picnic, and the other one would walk across a scary rope bridge on a deep canyon. And the people that went across the bridge were more likely to say they were attracted to the person they went on the first date with. And this demonstrates this effect that we have, and that is borne out in a lot of the anecdotes that people will talk about, and in what Kalani did. That before the car accident that Asuelu went through, she's like, I'm done. And then after the accident, she has a heightened emotion of care and fear and longing for him to be okay, because she's a good person, and plus he's the father of her children. But she confuses that, if you will. I mean, it's a funny thing to say confuse, right? Because is it confusing, or is that what love is partially, is those kinds of events that you go through? But anyway, cult videos. So this is the one where they talked with Jess. Seth says, I think it's a little moronic for Vanessa to want honesty in her relationship with Colt. She knew he was cheating on Jess with her. Yeah, so this is a common observation, I suppose, of Colt and Vanessa. And I don't know what to think of it, because on one hand, Vanessa should absolutely not trust Colt for a variety of reasons that Vanessa knows very well about. On the other hand, I think Colt and Vanessa come together in a very, very different way than the way Colt came together with Larissa and with Jess. So there's that. And I think Vanessa doesn't really trust him completely. I think that's the big thing. But it takes time to build up that trust. You just have to give it time. And I think Vanessa might be up for that. So I guess we'll find out in the future. Laura says, I don't know. Colt just always comes across like he's acting when he talks. So in this video, I asked y'all to comment below about your take on the way Colt communicates. And because the way that I perceive him, there's just something off about the way he communicates. I don't think it's like autism or anything like that, which is a very common go-to conceptualization or label or diagnosis that people will have when there's any kind of quirkiness in someone's communication, which is just a silly oversimplification and misattributing of a label. But anyway, it's possible that he's on the spectrum, but there's nothing in the show that indicates that directly. Point being that people on the autism spectrum can it's not always, you can't always detect them just based on the way that they talk. Anyway, so I was wondering, what is it about him? Because there is something weird. Even the way he moves seems a little odd to me. And I couldn't put my finger on what it is. Anyway, so Laura says, I don't know, Colt just always comes across like he's acting when he talks. Interesting, acting. Yeah, it could be. I mean, he certainly seems insecure. Ashell says, I think he is acting. The way he talks and gesticulates reminds me of all the daytime soap operas my grandma used to watch. I think he might have so much shame over who he actually is, for whatever reason, that he feels like he has to play this role. Yeah, it's a good conceptualization. Could be. I don't know. It's just hard to tell. All right, Real Housewives, Garcelle video. Meredith says, Garcelle was cheated on by her husband. In the past, she shared how painful that experience was. Okay, I didn't know that. Thank you for telling me that, Meredith. As possibly another reason as to why Garcelle is on the avoidant spectrum, meaning the avoidant attachment spectrum of like, I need to be independent, I can't really depend on other people, and being cheated on showed me that I can't depend on other people. East Awesome says, Garcelle had to grow up quickly. Garcelle is a first-generation American from a developing country. She began modeling at 17 in New York City. Interesting. So that could also cause strife on a family system that can cause a child to grow up quickly, and we see that she started modeling at 17, started working at 17, which doesn't necessarily mean that she was being emotionally neglected or that the family is going through hard times, but it is at least one kind of red flag in that zone. When you start working at a younger age, it can indicate or can be one of the symptoms of a neglecting or a family system that is set up such that you have to grow up very quickly and you have to become independent, which is good. Independence is good. The downside is you have to sacrifice your dependency on other people. Independence is good, but we want a balance between independency and dependency. We want to be able to do things on our own, but we also need to be able to reach out to other people when we need emotional support and other kinds of help. But for avoidant attached people, they swing way too far to the independence. And what that means is that they can't get their needs met, and they might not even know their emotions very well because they're used to shutting them off. Good Old Terrace says, I relate to Garcelle so much. When it comes to relationships with people outside of my family, unfortunately, there have been many times where I have learned I couldn't rely on others. By the time I was a teen, my role in the family was the independent one. I am working through this in therapy, but I still feel a lot of shame in being vulnerable, and even more so in feeling as though I am a burden on others. Yeah, it's a common thing to avoid attached individuals. They will feel like they're a burden or that no one cares. I also struggle with anxiety, which is another hallmark often of avoidant attachment. I also struggle with anxiety, so I spend a lot of time wanting to build strong relationships, but being terrified that no one will really have my back. It has unfortunately contributed to my loneliness. On the surface, it seems that I am content being independent and alone, but I am not. On the inside, I am screaming. Well, good for you, Terasar, for going to therapy and knowing this about yourself. That is, you're already halfway down the road. A lot of people don't even know the things that you already know about yourself, and so you're definitely on your way to recovery. Another Real Housewives video, Metonymy says, what's very strange is they focus on violation instead of I felt. Right. So there was a fight. Crystal saying that Sutton violated her, and instead of just talking about how Crystal felt, and Crystal it could have been better if Crystal said, look, I don't know if I was violated, but I felt violated because of who I am or my history or something like that, instead of you violated me, right? Good old Lavender says, it's bizarre to me when people react with But I'm fine with it when it happens to me. Like, great for you, but you're not her and she's not you. No one knows Crystal's background. Respect the lady's privacy, apologize, and say you won't do it again. Dang. Agree, Lavender. Good old Lavender. Kat says, another important point that I think gets lost in the whole situation is that Crystal has mentioned that she has had an active eating disorder in her life and major body image issues. Sutton is aware of this and should have been a bit more understanding. Well, I mean, it certainly could have been a factor in Crystal's reactivity to it, but I don't really hold people up to a high standard about empathy around eating disorders or any kind of mental condition because there's so much stigma and there's so little conversations about it that I don't think Sutton would necessarily. The average person doesn't know what an eating disorder is or how it would impact someone or body images. They just wouldn't know because we just don't talk about it enough. By the way, like along those lines, I wish that an hour every day in school from the time you're in kindergarten until you are out of college, you spend talking about the things that I talk about in this podcast, of which there are many things, and there are many other things we could be talking about. Now, with kindergartners, you would have a kindergartner version of what I'm talking about, something that they could relate to that wouldn't scare them. But I think our society would be so much better if we had this sort of thing. And I know some schools and education programs will incorporate some of the things that I'm talking about, but to me, it's either too little too late, or it's not enough, or it's not done in a very entertaining way that the kids really understand, or it's just like for a week out of the year anyway. So, but instead we spend all this time teaching about other things which are important, like math is important. But to me, all y'all out there, what's more important, mathematics or the stuff I'm talking about? And I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about the subjects I talk about that millions of other people are involved in. So it's not just things that I say. It's like I'm talking about subjects, attachment theory, for example, or, personality disorders or emotional health, this kind of thing. Which is more important, math or all that? I think all that is a million times more important than math. Math is important. And yet, kids study math every day, starting in kindergarten until, at least midway through high school, if not all the way through high school. And again, I'm not saying math isn't important. I actually wanted to be a math major in college. I like math. I like calculus. I like all that stuff. But what's more important to our society, to being able to work with other people? A big thing of school is trying to prepare you for the workplace. Well, what's more important than attachment theory to the workplace? I mean, nothing's more important than that. Anyway, Hanblin says, question, did you know that Kathy on Real Housewives is Paris Hilton's mom? Yes, I did. Knowing that, does it add context to Paris's documentary and the way that people in her social class view the world? Most of the housewives seem to care more about their reputation than being a good person. Well, Hanblin, I can't really tell. From the show, I see people that are on a show. They're being filmed. They definitely are materialistic, but how materialistic? Is it completely out of control? I just don't know. I'd have to assess them. But the hypothesis, Hanblin, of did the environment that Paris grew up in, the materialism and the money and the trying to keep up with the Joneses and trying to make sure you look good to the outside world and all these kinds of things, did that possibly affect Paris's upbringing and also lead to what happened to her being forced to go into those group homes, those what they call behavioral mod schools or whatever, and possibly affect her self-esteem and her image and her inability to just be herself. And she has to put on this persona that she put on for so long, the high voice Paris, if you will. Yes, absolutely. That's very, very possible. But there's too many factors there for me to evaluate based on watching a reality TV show. But it is a good question. And we all should think about that. I use these kinds of things as a way to think about our own lives, and we all need to think about how we are materialistic. Are we taking care of ourselves? What are our priorities? And maybe that's the biggest thing I say is like, what are your priorities? When you're thinking about what you're doing in the day, how much time is spent on making sure you look good to strangers or random people, as opposed to loving your spouse or your kids or your people? How much time is spent worrying about something in the future as opposed to being in the moment and enjoying your life? These are important things to evaluate, and perhaps watching Real Housewives and seeing people that are seemingly very focused on material, my dog is barking, material things and not focused on hearing each other could affect how they feel about themselves and how much well-being they have. Both my dogs are barking, so I'm guessing that there's someone at the front door who knocked on the door delivering a package. Because I can tell there's like a barking that they will do if someone just walks by in the street. There's a different barking if someone walks by with a dog. And then there's another level of barking if someone comes to the door and knocks on the door. I'm guessing it's that one. But anyway, everyone out there, well, actually, let's review some of these. Fatteus Boom Boom. Fatteus Boom Boom, take care of yourself. Turkey Girl, take care of yourself. Little Shit, take care of yourself. Emily E-Dog and Lemon Wedge, take care of yourself. Turd Butt, take care of yourself. Little Son and Big Son, same person, take care of yourself. Sushi, take care of yourself. And Dumpster Butt, take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.